YouTube comments from a video titled, "How much food can I grow in 1 year?" Part 9.
At Extra Crispy wrote,
The food that you made is real good. You know 'cause you growed it yourself. And it's tastes better from your hard work. Thank you. Would love to see next year crops.
At Super Sylvia S15 wrote,
I know everyone wants the idea of organic, but there is absolutely zero problem with putting some triple 19 on. A few times a year that's 19% nitrogenuria, 19% potassium, and 19% phosphorus, which is a great all-around fertilizer. Then get yourself some 7 granules, and it will take care of most of the buggies.
Azadgo wrote,
They gave you only third? Yeah, it's fair, but it was a dump. Why not give you the whole land to plant? And in return, you give them some of the produce.
At Greg_or 2986 wrote,
Great try is for first time. Read some about permaculture if you haven't yet. You can also find pairs or groups of plants that support each other and better grow mixed. Also, some flowers and herbs can keep insects and diseases away. And as cost and earnings, you should not count supermarket feed prices, but healthy food shop bio vegetables. They could be twice or more as expensive.
At Kingdonet 4043 wrote,
I know that in many Asian countries they have giant green onion stems. I wonder how those are developed. I'd love some of my own, as they're impossible to find where I live.
At Hrathen39 wrote,
Trust me, in the big cities, we would need to pay 10x for the amount you estimated it could cost to buy in your local grocery. So at least $640.
At Nothisdeus Vegas wrote,
Barring catastrophe, I think that if you continue with the vegetables, tweaking your technique as you learn, and then undertake beekeeping in concert with the veggies, then I think you'll have one hell of an enviable harvest in both aspects. Also, if you follow through on the idea of raising chickens to counter the slug problem, there will be no stopping you. And you'll have eggs to boot.
At Gabrielle Cristiano 0 wrote,
Between startup costs and lack of experience, I didn't expect you to make any more. However, did you find the quality to be better? Also, do you find gardening peaceful?
At its_Hokori wrote,
Seeing the dude complain about snow in Feb when it can snow in early May where I live just makes me realize how bad the weather is in Canada.
At RJ Gold 5.12 wrote,
Sir, I suggest you check out the book, Square Foot Gardening by Mel Bartholomew, to learn how to plant using every square inch of your raised beds. I have used this method for decades, and it's very efficient. Blessings to you and your family.
At Zana7196 wrote,
Great job, especially if you did it first time in your life and if you want to continue. I would advise you, do not buy stuff like onions and potatoes in the garden centers or online as seeds. They are so expensive there. Plants that easily vegetative you can buy just from the supermarket, and they will grow the same way as those expensive bulbs you bought. Best luck for you.
At Theoroth 3669 wrote,
Dear Alex, so good to watch your video. I am happy to see young men like you being interested in the real things. Keep on going, and my best senior wishes from Germany Theater. Try to experience the deeper aspects of gardening, things that do not appear on the surface at once.
At Butcher This 1296 wrote,
Sprinkle some Epsom salt at the base of your plants. Also, you can also dig a hole, put a cup in the hole, and pour beer in the cup. Goodbye, slugs.
At the Bunyadeth wrote,
Quite a lot if you harvest ABD regrow 3 or 4 times and change crops. for THW season. Ask 5 if my neighbors. I made more food than my wife and I could eat and gave hundreds of pounds of produce away.
Ekuno 3336 wrote,
I like that depth was in imperial and the rest was in metric. I wish I knew both well enough to just jump from one to the next.
Enrico Lime wrote,
I'm jealous. I tried to grow stuff in a raised garden. Definitely, the climate has a big effect. Your area looks pretty mild, decent mild sunlight, not too hot, not too terribly cold, and bugs look to be a minimum. You also had a greenhouse you could start off in. Yeah. Summers here get up to 115 F. Winters down to 0 F. It rains a ton. And bugs, freaking everywhere.
At Sally 8234 wrote,
The adamaceous earth will help with slugs, plus it's non-toxic to animals. You just spread over the topsoil and around your beds. You can buy it over the internet. Make sure it's food grade.
At Amamoriyama 6616 wrote,
Hydroponics FTW can grow more in less space and faster. Of course, if your goal is saving money, nothing is cheaper than putting seed to dirt and growing what is expensive to buy. I grow because I want healthy food that also tastes good. The junk from the store is just that, junk. If you like flavorless, low nutrition produce, sure, go to the store. If you like me, like to taste what I'm eating, nothing beats growing it yourself. Just don't go growing the same varieties you buy from the store. Where I live, the most favorite and best-selling homegrown tomato is the German Johnson. It makes a mean tomato sandwich. However, other varieties are more suited for salads, if that is your thing. Overall, if you enjoy doing it, it's not really work. Edit. Your onion comment reminded me of an experiment. Last summer, I found an onion chilling in my cabinet that I guess I forgot about. It was sprouted, so I took it outside and plopped it onto some soil in a hanging pot. It multiplied and is still growing, even after a massive chill of -14°C. That chill killed the top, but it sent out new green shoots a week later. I'm surprised how resilient that onion has been. I literally have not watered it even once. No watering, no fertilizer, nothing. Bulb to dirt and hanging pot and neglected it, LOL.
At Mad Painter 69 wrote,
Most of the things you bought can be used for years. Keep gardening. It will get better. I think your potato area needs to have 2 more layers high. But you have the right idea. There are people on YouTube that make different ideas that work well. There is a lot of good help on YouTube. I like honey. But I would not recommend having them in your backyard. There are several bee boxes very near to my work, and I have had more run-ins with them, but good luck.
At the Senseless Name wrote,
Potatoes should be under earth until the greens you see are really faded and dried out. Then it's time to put the potatoes out. Tomatoes like a roof, they don't want to get wet. Brown rot danger. You can use fine grinded eggshell to get rid of the snails. But it has to be really fine. No powder, but really fine. We had even bigger zucchinis. They grow crazy, and the longer you let them grow, the harder the scale gets, and you can store them quite long. Same with pumpkin.
At A1 DJ Paul wrote,
Fresh potatoes, wash them and half-boil them in salted water, place in an oven, try and squeeze fresh lemon juice over them, along with the lemon skins. Add salt and roast until soft and golden brown. Or, to your preferred texture, maybe a twist of black pepper. To roast, I use butter and olive oil. Equals superb homegrown, fresh new potatoes cooked in butter, lemon, and salt and pepper to your taste.
At Nick Fulcrium wrote,
Yea, once you start learning to harvest your own seeds and how replicate plants and trim them so the other stuff will grow better, you'll see keep going.
At a 1 DJ Paul wrote,
A mountain of potatoes is called a pie. Potato storage needs to be cool but not cold, and out of the frost. In the shade and well ventilated. Dry.
At Nick Fulcrium wrote,
Cut the small ones like little bits of them and leave them in the ground. You'll have potatoes year-round, or save a few to cut and do the same.
At a 1 DJ Paul wrote,
Why buy seed potatoes? Just use any potatoes out of date and popping out shoots. The last few in the bag before you go shopping. Buy fresh carrots with some greenery on the top, place in water/soil and allow to start to grow, then plant out. After you have eaten the rest of the carrots, all you need is the green top and 1 to 2 centimeters of carrot top. The bit you normally throw in the bin. I did a no-dig garden all in pots on my large patio with same as above and other similar free items. They all grew very well. As a bit of a hobby in lockdown.
At a 1 DJ Paul wrote,
Growing your own food is great as a hobby, if you enjoy it. 1 hour spent planting and weeding and watering is far better spent doing other paid work for someone else / overtime at work or part-time job. Fresh fruit and veg is the very cheapest item available in the shops. Homegrown fruit and veg is certainly not a viable use of time, unless it's a zero-maintenance perennial fruit tree or bush, delivering free fruit with zero attention. Apples, blackberries, rhubarb, and similar.
At Mini T4315 wrote,
I don't know whether you used pesticide, but in terms of pricing, you need to compare organically homegrown vegetables to organic vegetables purchased in the shop, if you can find them at all, and also factor in the freshness and the condition of the vegetables. Veggies where freshness is a consideration: lettuce, herbs, greens, compare very favorably in terms of convenience and price. Also a tip, sow seed sparingly. Allow your best plant to go to seed and generate hundreds of free healthy seedlings. Store any seed packets in the freezer, as happens in winter naturally, and you won't need to spend much on seeds at all. Thanks for a great video.
At RobaPinsart4240 wrote,
First video I watched from you and I already was face sucked to my screen. Love your passion, your ideas, your way of editing, everything just clicks. Looking forward to the rest of your vids and the upcoming ones.
At Helen4214 wrote,
Interesting video. One thing you said in the beginning. Will it save you money? When there is no food in the stores cause all the truck drivers have COVID and no one can truck the food into the cities, it won't matter how much money you have if there is no food in the store. I'm also thinking of getting a dehydrator for some foods to keep on the shelf. Also learn how to pickle or freeze. I've made up lots of tomato bolognese sauce and frozen. Instant meal, just have to add pasta and meat. Great use of large crop of tomatoes.
At 小熊维尼习近平 CCP wrote,
No, you actually made money from growing and eating your homegrown vegetables. You forgot to account for money from medical bills. Eating your homegrown foods prevent you from getting ills.
Zweron wrote,
If you get slugs on zucchinis, leave one zucchini on there that they already started eating, and they will. Leave the others alone, cause it is hard for them to get through the hard skin, so they focus on the already broken one.
At Fungus375 wrote,
Take a look at No Dig Charles Dowding and Hugh Richards. I have started that due to last year's heat wave and possible get more produce from the land, and that I am lucky to live on the east coast of Essex before the North Sea. I hope that helps. Damn, I may start giving this do a vid on what the hell I am doing, and yes, it will be done all through a phone. I not buying stuff lol.
At Amy3266 wrote,
Last year was my first year to grow as well. My potatoes, green beans, and tomatoes were better than any other crops. I had them all in containers. Cabbage, cauliflower, and broccoli plant were ruined by white butterflies, eggs/caterpillar.
At Tenors3258 wrote,
I've been growing veg for over 50 years, and I'm still learning. Apply that maxim, and you won't go far wrong. I don't know if you can or plan to stay a few years at your property, but if you do, I would certainly look to grow some fruit and some perennial veg and herbs. Many of these can be grown in containers, so even if you do move with care, they can go with you. Well done with the garden so far. Best wishes.
RV7OE wrote,
In this video, what you've learned is don't waste foods. It's harder to make them yourself than having a job in the office and buy them in the market.
At FatCat7MSK7RU wrote,
Make one more box for compost. Mix their bio waste with leaves and grass. Put some earthworms there and add it to you clayish soil. If you do it regularly, we'll see the huge difference in about 6 or 8 years.
At LordPickle8424 wrote,
Sorry man had to downvote. At 10:00 or so, actual legitimate humans could see you using your left hand to write. Left-handed people are not real people but subhuman filth instead. You should be ashamed of yourself.
At Bankrupt Monkey wrote,
One hack is to grow climbing plants with tall plants in the same spot. For example, beans will grow upwards on a tomato plant, etc. Another is to grow expensive things like mushrooms or foods normally imported to your country in your yard to save money compared to buying. Another is that neighbors in a town or friendly old people in the city will probably give you free seeds from their plants to cut on startup costs.
At Sridharm1282 wrote,
Good try, bro. Your dad kindly allowed you to use greenhouse. If you convert this to India, here people feel like whatever belongs to their father, they will take it as granted. No one asks permission, and no one dares to oppose. If you ask permission, will look in weird way.
At Sorkia56 wrote,
Good on you, mates. Cheers for sharing your hard work with us. I've started my root cellar round. I'm excited to see the progress over the next 6 to 8 weeks. Brilliant work. I subbed. I want to see what else you can do.
At Rondatosin4275 wrote,
He who plants the seed and he who waters the seed is the same, but the growth thereof is of God. God is required for the multiplication of cells. When this happens, you can witness a miracle under a microscope. Check out a human stem cell multiply. It has to be divided by its DNA. Nothing man can explain can do that. Scientists want to call it a polar force.
At Saxophonin wrote,
If you have construction skills but don't want to buy wood, I would recommend looking for pallets on Verge Collections for free, or even buying cheaply from construction sites and stuff.
At LamerOscar5954 wrote,
Potatoes are harvested when tops of the vines are completely dead. That is a sign that potatoes stop to grow. You did a great job. but harvested still blooming potatoes, therefore most of them were not developed yet. You are a great young gardener, and you do an amazing job. My mom used to say if the season is good, on average, one potato can give harvest of 15 to 20 big potatoes.
At Urshider 8923 wrote,
It is by far the bewilderment of a kid in a first-time experience at a candy shop that makes this clip so endearing and a worthwhile watch. Living this experience vicariously, I was able to experience the raw emotions of extreme exhilaration at harvest time and the downright annoyance at pests to its fullest capacity. This clip is quite literally a masterpiece in matters relating not to the expertise in gardening as much as it is analogous to the thrill Forrest Gump must have experienced opening his first box of chocolates. The innocence of it all is beautifully captured by this gardening novice in his wonderment over the natural process of Allah's creations at work. Well done, and keep it up, brother. Lots of good wishes on your future gardening endeavors from Sri Lanka. Pays. The icing on the cake for you, brother, would be to donate some of the excess fresh vegetables to those less fortunate ones, especially the elderly in your neighborhood.
A Hazardous Life wrote,
I don't know how these brilliant people do this sort of stuff to work on one video for a year. Is dedication I give up after a month.
At our Zero Ketred wrote,
Respect, I know how much work it is to take care of that many plants. People think you just put a seed in the ground outside and come back later and maybe water them a little bit when it doesn't rain. Edit, try weaving in some lemongrass plants. Bugs hate them, and this will help keep them away without using chemicals. They also smell great.
At Delta Creative Agency wrote,
Just by reading the title of this video, I knew he wasn't going to save any money. If you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to understand where and how to save money while growing your food. When I grow, I can get at least a 10x return, but most of the time it's between 50x and 100x.
Plushy Puppy wrote,
This made me so happy. I'm taking a botany class in high school right now, and my dream is to have my own farm and make money that way. Since I never want to work a regular hours job where I have to struggle every day just to wake up. I'd much rather wake up after the sun rises to see how much my plants have grown instead of doing whatever customer service job I'd end up with otherwise.
At William Knights 9726 wrote,
Will, you really have to adjust time spent in garden and harvesting food / time spent. Buying in grocery store over how much your skills are worth at a job sees how much your free time is worth to you. My free time is worth more than any business can pay me.
At Nathamilk 1977 wrote,
Welcomed to being an actual farmer. We don't make any money after expense. You're welcome. And we do this for thousands of acres. Grow all this food, and we don't make a dime. Agriculture is slave labor. Think of the hours you put in on your garden. Now, put a wage / hour on that. Yep. That's being a farmer.
Eped0S0N0 wrote,
In 1710, I prefer not peeling the potatoes coating, but cleaning them nice. That gives a different, and for me, better taste. Try it if you want. The video was amazing 3.
At Jandontia 1446 wrote,
Plant sunflowers and thistles and dandelions for the bees, as those have the most nectar. If you want better yields on your crops, add the coals from your pizza oven to your planters, as the potash is a great source for potassium and phosphor. Also, bury rotten branches deep in your beds to hold water and provide food for the microbiome within the soil.
At Jandontia 1446 wrote,
Slugs can be reduced easily by buying some diatomaceous earth and layering the whole bed with it before nighttime. Do not apply on wet soil, and don't water soil after applying the layer DE. It is actually made up of the shell of microscopic sea creatures called diatoms. The nature of the shell absorbs moisture like silicone does. Any bugs that walk over this layer will have the moisture in their body wicked away. Slugs dry up real quickly. It is non-toxic and is actually a good fertilizer for your plants as well. I noticed you had a lot of bare soil. Keep on planting things wherever you have bare ground. Research plants that grow within 2 months for quick harvests and turnover.
At Jandontia 1446 wrote,
BTW, your potatoes weren't done as their flowers. So replants the clusters, leaving a few babies. Add some more mulch on top to ensure the potatoes don't go green. Keep the potatoes you did harvest in a dark, cool, and dry spot. Do not wash dirt off the potato until you are ready to cook it, because storing the potato with dirt will last longer than if you clean off that protective layer. Also, don't throw away any weeds or leaves or dead debris. Just make a compost pile and reintroduce onto the beds once all plants are taken out during the cold winter months.
At Jandontia 1446 wrote,
Next year, plant the onions, garlic and shallots along the perimeter of the beds, as they are great for repulsing burrowing pests, as well as they are in the ground and don't grow high above the ground. Always situate garden beds where the tallest plants are in the middle and the shortest plants are closest to the edge. That way you will be able to reach everything. Mix both quickly growing veggies and slow growing veggies so that your bed is always producing something throughout the year. Start winter plant seeds such as kale and broccoli in the summer indoors so they sprout, and you can plant them during the autumn months before the frost so that they are well established before winter truly begins. The Native Americans had a technique where they planted two veggies in the same spot. These are called the Three Sisters: corn, beans, and squash. Technically, it can be any of the following groups: tall stalky plants, vine plants that will use the stalky plants as natural trellises, and ground plants that enjoy the shade. It is so great you are going green.
As Slowcat 11 wrote,
I don't even know why I watched this entire video. And I say that because I live in a flat. Actually, the process was interesting, and knowing that you were learning as you went along made it even more so. Glad it worked out. Your garden looked attractive, and it seems it was successful, all in all. Despite not being a money saver, you could continue growing things yearly and spread out your initial costs over that period. In that way, you could see a savings.
As Zachary Rodriguez wrote,
Wonderful. If ever there was a hobby worth spending some money on, it's gardening. You spend as much as an annual subscription to RuneScape, but the skills you gain are real, relevant, and rewarding.
At Titatop 3122 wrote,
Farmer here, you did great. We farm large-scale eggplant and squash. Gotta say your squash was looking delicious. Time, sweat, and very hard work goes into the veggies we eat. Thank you.
At Juricocality 7358 wrote,
The most important thing is that it is homegrown vegetables. The taste is definitely different from wholesale products. At least you know what you're fertilizing it with and that it's not boosted. Nice video.
At the Viking 88 wrote,
Don't go for chickens if you want to get rid of the slugs. Get a duck. Ducks are slugs' bane. They eat them up like it's a kid in a free candy store. They're also really cute, but they do shit everywhere they go.
At Rich 8381 wrote,
And how much is your time worth an hour? I'm in sales, so if I make one sale instead of gardening, I'm set for the entire year and then some.
At Perimanso 6841 wrote,
Believe me, the best thing against slugs is ESH. They can't stand it. If you throw a barrier made of ash, the slugs will not cross it. Some friend told me about it, and I guarantee you that 100% it works.
At Zondes 757 wrote,
Farming is one of the things humans made obsolete on a personal level, so I already knew you were going to lose money. Farming in your garden is a hobby and a health thing, not to save money. You're not going to compete against one farmer with huge lands and machines on cost effectiveness. Also, you need to factor in that you could have bought those vegetables in 10 minutes versus the tens of hours you spent on growing them.
At Madmoicano wrote,
Bro, you need to braid the onions, not sack them. Try it out. Use some cordyline leaves, get them on water for a few hours to get them malleable. And just braid the onions with cordyline mixed. And make a big braid. Put that over a log hanging. And just pick onions as you need. They keep fresh. And don't go soft as they are not in a sack. It's what we do here in Portugal. Try it out.
At Dangerism 1 NDZ wrote,
How is it that you have so little followers besides what an amazing video and best audio I've heard better than? The million subscriber YouTubers, they can learn so much from just you keep going amazing video.
At the Brightman wrote,
A lot of people try to garden or raise animals to save money, and it's a fool's errand. Sure, you can probably get there. But the advantage is that once you get running is that you're now more self-reliant. That's what you're paying for with all the extra costs.
At Baksuvis wrote,
Some of those were being affected by powdery mildew, which is mostly superficial, not really harmful. But it can in severe cases stunt growth and slightly impact plant health.
At Joe Barrett 4353 wrote,
The biggest benefit of home-growing IMHO is they are fresh and tasty. Commercial growers grow varieties that are reliable croppers, uniform in size, and keep well on supermarket shelves. They don't care about taste. Your homegrown ones will be far superior. Don't look to save money.
At Whitey Miasma 5288 wrote,
Now imagine going through all that to feed the hating world while they sit around and mock you. Deuteronomy 28:33 The fruit of thy land, and all thy labors, shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway. I'd say that is well underway.
At the Path Forward G1L wrote,
I have been gardening on my small rocky estate since 2010. I have 5 6x12 raised bed gardens. I also grow potatoes and sweet potatoes in containers. The abundance of these gardens amazes everyone. Huge yields. I can greens, beans, salsa, pasta sauce, carrots, and more. During the spring and early summer, I eat mostly greens like lettuce, collards, turnip greens, and cabbage. The health benefits are huge. This is what everybody who has land available needs to do.
At Hyperhype 1000 wrote,
Get a small saucer of beer and place the edge at ground level. Place some twigs across the center of the saucer. You'll kill the slugs and help keep beetles alive, as they'll have the twigs to help them get out.
At Fat Cargi 1UZ wrote,
I really want to do a vegetable garden in my small yard, and this really inspired me. One thing I would like to suggest, this is according to what my grandmother used to say, is that you should grow basil alongside tomatoes, because the basil, besides being delicious, deters a lot of pests from ruining your tomatoes.
At Genemasa 9492 wrote,
Thank you for making this video. Last year was my first year trying to grow vegetables. I didn't have nearly as great results as you did. But indeed, I had a lot of fun. My favorite was cucumber. I had one successful plant and it gave me 5 or 6 beautiful cucumbers. The taste was far superior to anything you could buy in a supermarket.
At Ryan Ennis 3199 wrote,
To help with your slug problem, put a cup in the ground with opening flush with soil and half fill it with beer. They are attracted to the beer and will fall in and die.
Cajun 3206 wrote,
The blackening is also caused by mold, but if it only happens to the fetus, it needs more nutrients. It is better to mix banana peels and eggshells with water and pour.
At Ninjan Saker wrote, At some user 4166 wrote,
You might have lost money, but I think that's worth it, so be assured there's no cancer-causing pesticides in your food. What's your health worth to you?
At It's Nure wrote,
Love the narration, voice, discipline, and editing in this video 3. I also like how when we try to learn something, we start to appreciate things. Huge respect to all farmers and gardeners.
At Delosian wrote,
My first thoughts are a lack of nutrients in the soil, but also that you've probably just taken them out of the ground too early. Nice healthy green leaves means they're still growing. Depending on the type of potato, they can take anywhere between 10 to 20 weeks to grow to maturity. Try adding manure to get the phosphate and nitrogen levels up, and wood ash from the pizza oven to get the potassium levels up. Grass clippings are good to put on top of the soil under the potato leaves. The potatoes also need a lot of sunlight, and being put in a corner with high walls minimizes that.
Jacques Zero Lay wrote,
One thing where you can really win at with home gardening is having fresh herbs like thyme, rosemary, basil, mint, etc. that you don't use in big quantities, but the moment you need them, you just go to your garden and take the freshest possible stuff you can get. This is also very nice when you have a few pots with herbs indoors during winter, and you still get fresh herbs, which is sometimes they don't sell in winter in some places.
At Daryl Birdsall 2342 wrote,
Hi Alex, from my perspective, growing one's own food isn't about saving money, particularly in the beginning. No, growing one's own food is about becoming self-sufficient. Learning to grow your own vegetables is a journey, and you're well on your way to becoming much better at it. When you grow your own food, you are aware of what you're eating or not eating, such as pesticides, herbicides, or chemical fertilizers. By growing your food and practicing organic gardening methods, including polyculture, you will have healthier plants, and thereby little or no pests. After all, pests thrive on sick plants, and they are confused by the odors emitted from various vegetables that are grown together. That's why it's good to use companion planting methods and not practice monoculture in home gardens. Unfortunately, when I lived in London, I didn't have the possibility to have my own garden. Where I live here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a clay-based soil, so I know what you went through. Although I could successfully grow a few things in this very dense soil, vegetables such as onions or beans simply didn't do well or germinate at all. Onions need to grow in loose soil, and bean sprouts require a lot of strength to germinate and won't pierce dense soil and will ultimately die. Therefore, I had to amend the clay soil to a great degree in order to achieve good to excellent results. I am certain you learned a lot during your first year of growing veg. For me, there is a direct relationship between vegetable gardening and cooking. They are intertwined. Both cooking and vegetable gardening require planning, trial and error, experimentation, and imagination, and of course practice. Often, there is no one way to doing things. From the looks of things, your vegetable garden was a great success. The only ones who fail are those who never try. Cheers made and greetings from Port Angeles, Washington, USA.
At 100 Mil Plus Baby wrote,
With potatoes, if you spread them out, you'll get a more consistent size. They take up a lot of room and need space to grow. And don't be afraid to throw food compost onto the garden bed. Over time, it provides nutrients for the plants.
The way to broad.
You did not lose money. Your bed will be free next growing season. Your soil will be free. The wood is already paid for, and you can triple or quadruple your harvest next year, and the money and labor you spend are an investment, not like buying ice cream, and when you eat it, it's gone. When you plant a vegetable garden, it is perpetual if you take care of it, and it can keep you alive in harsh times. I wish your roommates would do the same, one with aquaponics and the other with chickens 9 or 10. You also did not include the gas you saved not having to go to the store and the labor of shopping. When you get your onions in, cut the greens off for chives, for potatoes or something. Don't let them just dry out and brown. When you have an onion, cut it across its rings, not vertical. When it gets down to the roots and you have it in a Ziploc bag, it will try to sprout. When that green appears, put the remainder back into the soil in an indoor planter, and then later outdoor, and get more green onions. Or, if they bulb, keep harvesting the same onion over and over again. The cycle repeats. I don't know if you can do the same with carrots, but potatoes often sprout. Cut the sprout out with about a cubic inch of potato with it and plant it. Eat the remainder of the potato. Many foods can resprout and be replanted this way, but onions and potatoes especially so. You have a fine garden, good soil, also plant sweet potatoes. They grow well and will keep you alive.
Achida Stuff 7091 wrote.
That's a great garden UHV there, mate. Little tips if you want it to be a sustaining garden. You should plant continuously every month or so after winter, so you can keep harvesting before winter.
The way to broad.
When you have a 9-month growing period from, say, February for planting and germinating indoors or under insulated plastic outdoors to early November, for your last harvest of in-ground items, you should consider rotating your crops and alternating your plants and adding more nutrients throughout the year, like kitchen compost. Including eggshells, peels, and any uneaten food going to waste, put it in a 5-gallon bucket with some soil and worms and let it compost for later use. When your potato plants are still living, and you pull them up a bit to harvest your large potatoes, replant it, so the small ones can continue living. Also, with a 90 to 100 day cycle, on potatoes, plant new seed potatoes in between. After about 70 days, they will be young and green by the time you are pulling up the first harvest, and 60 to 70 days later can do a second harvest. And in this way, you could have 4 harvests in a given season and not just one. Same with carrots and onions. Another good food you missed is cabbage. It can grow in the winter as well as broccoli, so you can have a late winter harvest into December if you use plastic to protect from extreme cold. But I have seen broccoli thriving under snow like it was nothing. As for slugs, feed them to the fish, have tilapia or some other of your favorite fish in an aquaponic system. Growing lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, and duckweed for the fish, you must have some nutrients in the water to begin with and not just fish and seeds. They have to get their nutrients from soil the same as any other life form. Use a plant light to help the plants in the evening, and at night it will gather flying insects to help feed the fish. Also give the fish the grub worms and have crayfish to feed on trash items and leftovers. Put out a shallow tin of leftover beer for the slugs. Press it down into the soil so they can go over the edge. Put beer into the can, and in the morning you will have pill bugs and slugs for your fish. Leftover fish can feed both your compost and your crayfish, which can grow up to a foot long, just like lobster, depending on the species. Good luck!
At Elgervital 3268 wrote.
It seems fun, but what he spends in fertilizer, soil, and seeds could be equal or more expensive than just buying some vegetables and fruits. Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Maybe it's just the shitty economy I live in.
At EchoPenner 7217 wrote.
Scatter eggshells around your plants to keep the slugs off. Use a pitchfork to turn the composite into the soil. Turn your beds every year just before winter and before you start planting. Strawberry plants will produce in the second year, but not the first. Dash, remember to cover your beds with straw. Before winter, Dash tomatoes don't like being in a greenhouse. Dash zucchini can grow to the size of a toddler if you don't pick often, and it can run away on you very quickly. And while it's tempting to let them grow, the fruit becomes almost inedible. The fruit is best harvested when it's about the length of your forearm. Remember that the longer you work on your soil, the better it will become. It's hard but rewarding if you can put the time in. Happy gardening
And Mikhail wrote,
I wonder if he compared his costs with regular or organically grown vegetables. I'm assuming he didn't use any pesticides or harsh chemicals, so a fairer comparison would be to compare the total net weight to that of their organic counterparts.
And Baklau007 wrote,
All of that would only cost £64 at the local market. How cheap are veggies in the UK? Here in Canada, that would surely be several hundred at today's prices.
At Lazy Idiotophthminth wrote,
Just going to point out that I can't plant anything until May 15 because that's when I can be sure I won't have a frost freeze. I also have until October 10th before the average first freeze of fall. Concerning the potatoes, you are supposed to hill them until you reach 10 inches above the planting point.
At Craig Kirby 9202 wrote,
There is a slug and snail pellet that is organic and actually breaks down into iron for you garden. Its active ingredient is iron chelate, and it's even safe for aquaponics systems. They accumulate anything bad that you put into them. You will find it in any store that sells such stuff. Chickens are awesome, but will eat your veggie garden to the ground if allowed. You can fence in your garden and let chickens roam around it, but you will still need to get rid of the snails and slugs in your veggie patch. Cracking efforts.
At Olifs 9298 wrote,
I am in the process of getting some vegetables grown. Roman IV always loved gardening, but never made enough effort, and usually everything dies. 2023 resolution, among others, is to get my act together and do it properly. And this video is absolutely epic for motivation cheers. Also been planning to build a pizza oven, so this is a double whammy.
At C2 Sartinkpranthub 757 wrote,
You lost time and did not factor in the land cost. What is the actual time dedicated for the construction to harvest? If this is not for the views. You are dead by starvation by now. Hobbyists are not measured in economic terms just by self-satisfaction.
A Democrat Suck 1 wrote,
In the coming years here, it will be smart to turn your yards into gardens. Get it done now when you can rent machinery to turn your soil and get rid of clay and such. 1-2 an acre of yard can be turned into more than 65 worth of food, lol, especially if you don't do what this buffoon did and grow a bunch of weird shlt. 25 bowls of garlic. Dafuck, look at this towhead, of course he grew that. Just grow potatoes, some onion, maybe cucumbers, tomatoes. The nutritious stuff, 'cause once the Illuminati takes away meat you're gonna wither. Def smart to have access to potatoes though.
A Democrat Suck 1 wrote,
1358, that happened to me once, but I woke up and felt some sticky wet shlt in between my legs. I reached down and was like WTF. Pulled a slug out and chucked it. El Mao, never sleep on the ground in the woods without a tent. Not a good idea.
A K1VV 1939 wrote,
Free potato tip. When you buy a bag of eating potatoes, they have been dusted with an anti-grow compound. You probably don't want to eat that, so wash them, especially any nice-looking spuds with growing eyes. And when it comes time to use eat the spud, cut 1/3 of the spud, with the good growing eye off, let the flesh harden for a week, then plant it.
Don't plant glassy or diseased spuds. It doesn't get better, okay?
A K1VV 1939 wrote.
The other way of growing in small areas for top plant producing not good with root crops is growing in bucket-sized pots in coconut husk chip. It's got nothing in it, so you buy liquid fertilizer. Any of your hydroponics suppliers should have a mix, and water free draining when needed or every 3 days pending temperature. Environment and plants. Free draining means you water till it comes out the bottom, and stop you water slowly and all over the surface of the pot. Allow time to soak and water again little at a time. A bucket-sized pot with a 3-foot high capsicum plant is going to take 3 separate waterings over 10 minutes before water should begin to come out the bottom. Do not reuse the draining water, it's finished. In this case, you could put them out in the sun, but if it's snowing, bring them under shelter. Perfect for tomatoes, capsicum, and stuff like that, okay? The coconut husk chip is reusable. Shake the roots out, wash, and heat in the oven to 100 degrees for 1 hour to kill any bugs. This is hydroponics, and the bugs get smaller and can look like mushrooms, and it's this you are heating to kill. Good luck and have fun with your growing.
A K1VV 1939 wrote.
Well, if you read your comments, here's a tip with potatoes. Make a spade hole, put your seed potato in, and fill the hole up with cow or horse *T. Make sure they get water till they flower and then stop watering. Doing this means you don't need good soil, and by doing this, you will build soil. Your seed potatoes are large. As soon as you get big spuds like that, find the eyes and, if possible, cut the potato in half and let the flesh dry for a week before planting, thus doubling your seed number. Well, that's hint 1.
Dasilu wrote.
Here's a trick against snails. You can either use adhesive metal tape or just fence wire. Wind 2 separate lines around with a 5 space between them and connect them to a 9V battery. Since only the attacking snail closes the circuit, the battery should last forever. That low voltage is enough to repel those little pests. You can even connect all of them to just one battery. But beware, you're forcing nature to evolve. And when snails get wings, humanity is screwed.
Shacket Nightspark wrote.
Cost-wise, it really depends on what you need and plan on doing. First, startup may or may not be expensive. If you plan on doing raised beds for them, yeah, it will cost more to build or buy them. Depends if want a greenhouse, it is going to cost more. As for the cheaper option, it is more about just getting some garden tools, a shovel, a metal rake, and a hoe, really, and do it right on the ground.